And so more on this with retired General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. So we're 4 minutes into this new strategy. Tell us your thoughts on the ability to get this to a better conclusion after the talks broke down.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the timing is exquisite here in terms of what's actually taken place. I mean, clearly, Iran had the momentum and the upper hand when they shut down the Straits of Hormuz. And then the administration went to a ceasefire, and Iran got what they wanted. They wanted the war to stop. So we went into negotiations, and clearly the president gave his negotiators clear instructions here, and he wanted everything, and he didn't get everything. The Iranians kind of surprised me a little bit. I think they actually miscalculated somewhat, because I think they overplayed their hand in the sense of what the Straits of Hormuz and taking control of it meant. We all understand the significance it means in the region and its impact on the world economy. Got that. But I think they believed it had more impact on the president and his team than that. And they expected us to fold and make some concessions because they believed they had us in the right place based on the fact that they were now in control of the Straits of Hormuz. And that wasn't the case at all. You know, my confidence is always in the president. He's the #1 backstop here, and he's not going to make a bad deal, and that's the reality of it. In terms of what's in front of us now, this is the right thing to do. We now have taken a momentum away from Iran. That is clear. We're in the hour of execution. Ships are coming on a channel that CENTCOM is demanding them to talk to on, and they will control their transit on that channel and tell them where to go and what to do. Anybody that tests it will see Marines boarding those ships. If Iran wants to test these things, that's what they're going to get. Likely, they'll have to calculate that. Do they really want the humiliation of that taking place with the Marines on international television boarding one of their ships that are carrying their oil? May not be their flagship, but it's carrying their oil. Or Iran is also threatening to take out some of the other ports facilities, certainly, or take out the oil production capabilities in the Gulf states or the natural gas production capability in Qatar. Or they could just stalemate and sweat this out a little bit with the United States, believing that the United States eventually would relent, because after all, oil isn't flowing to the degree it should flow. But remember, the escape valve here is what we have in place. Is the United States is going to permit the transit of oil for countries that are non-Iranian ports. It remains to be seen whether those ships will still transit because they believe Iran can intervene in it. So the second piece of this, and we haven't discussed it much, is we have the blockade. That's piece one. But we certainly believe that we will have to make certain the straits are open and clear. And that will take another operation by Central Command. They have obviously begun that operation by sending up, as you pointed out, a couple of destroyers. And we've got some underground drones looking for these mines that aren't tracked by the Iranians. So we got some mine sweeping to do. We got some clearance to do. And then also we have to secure the transit of all those other ships. And remember, for our audience to understand, this is an implication of the defense budget. When Reagan came after the Iranians in '88 because they were interfering with the transit of oil through the region, he had twice the number of ships that we have in the United States Navy now. We're under 300. Then he was closer to 600. We had a different Navy, and all the atrophy of Obama budgets and the 9/11 wars have brought us to this place, and the importance of the Trump defense budget in not just building up the Navy. The Army is the smallest it's been since prior to World War II. The Air Force is down 40-year low. That is going to be imperative. But this is a graphic illustration of why you need a larger Navy.
Remember the two objectives here, right? Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear program. Those seem to be A and B in terms of priorities. I'm curious to know, General, what card does Iran play? Because if they fire one shot, we're going back to war before the sun goes down here in New York.
Yeah, they certainly understand that. I'm confident. I think likely in front of us, I think our tactic would be let the ceasefire play out to its duration and prevent the Iranians want to come back and talk some more, and they may very well. I mean, they know now how stiff the Americans are in their position, and they may be willing to make some concessions they weren't made before. And as I've said time and time again here, Bill, even when they make those kind of concessions, you got to be completely skeptical about it, because their likelihood is just to delay the ceasefire, because that's in their interest and certainly not in ours. Yes, the Iranians know we'll go back to combat operations, but believe me, I think once the ceasefire ends, I think we need to go back to combat operations anyway. I mean, Cooper running Central Command and Zamir running the IDF, they both had close to 2 weeks left of targets to take down. That tells us there's still something out there, and I think we should go out and finish it. If there's very critical targets and we want to do something limited, then that's absolutely essential. But I think those commanders should drive, and certainly, and they're going to do that. They're going to tell Prime Minister Netanyahu and also President Trump, here's what we have left, here's what the tasks are ahead of us, and those decisions will be made accordingly.
General Keane, thank you. As we get underway with this blockade, just about 10 minutes in, and great to have your input this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.